Alright guys, so this problem is asking us, it says given the points 1, 1 and 4, 4, do the following. So there's three things we're being asked to do. It's asking us to find the distance, the midpoint, and the slope. So we're going to do each one at a time. I'm going to show you two ways to find the distance. And first, what I'm going to do is plot these 2 points. So I'm going to plot 1, 1, and then I'm going to go plot 4 and 4. And distance is what's the length in between these 2 points. Alright, so in order to do that, to find that, there are 2 ways I can approach this. I want to teach you the way that you're very familiar with already, and then I'm going to teach you the formula. And you do not have to memorize either one of these formulas. These formulas are on your formula sheet. And anytime you're doing any work, make sure you have out your formula sheet. So if I want to find the distance between these 2 points, there's 2 things I can use. The first one I'm going to use is Pythagorean Theorem. So I am going to draw a right triangle in between to connect these 2 points. So if we look at this side, the horizontal distance from this point to right here is 3, and a vertical distance from this point to right here is 1, 2, 3 also. So to find the distance of that, then we're going to do Pythagorean's theorem. So we're going to say, well, let me write distance. So distance one way, and you do not have to use both ways to find distance, but I'm going to show you both so that you'll know what you're doing and you choose which one you like best. So here I'm going to say a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I know a and b, which are these sides right here, a, b, and this is my c, and we work extensively on Pythagorean's theorem. I'm going to switch this around so that what I'm looking for is already on the correct side of the equation, so I'm not moving things around. So I'm going to go ahead and call c x. So c is x squared, and remember, anytime you substitute something in an equation, put it in parentheses. So x squared, and then a is 3, so we're going to say 3 squared plus 3 squared. We're going to draw our line, and we use our line method to help us solve this. So this is x squared equals 3 squared is 9 plus 3 squared is 9. And if you need to use your calculator, then so be it. And then we're going to go the square root of both sides. 9 plus 9 is 18, so the square root. And I know here I'm going to say x equals, now you can break this down or you can use your calculator to give you a decimal. For those of you that don't have a calculator at home, then you can go to decimals, so you can Google decimals, and this is the calculator that they're going to give you on your test. So you can practice with this one at home if you don't have your own. So I did the square root of 18, which is 4 point, and I'm going to go 2 decimal places, 4.24. So x equals 4.24, and we don't have any units up there, so I'm just going to say units. Alright, so that's one way to find distance. Now there's another way you can find distance too, and I'm going to go ahead and show you that. And as I continue to work these problems, I'm going to pick and choose. I'm not going to do both. Okay, the second way to find distance is to use the distance formula. So according to your formula sheet, distance equals the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. And if they have the y's first, that's fine. Just it's this formula, and as long as you get the plus right and you put the x's together in the correct way, it's fine. And make sure you square. So how do I do that? Then what I go and do is, you can still either use your graph or you can go and grab your points. So what I like to do is write my points down. So I'm going to say 1, 1, and then I'll call this point A, and the other one I'll call point B, and we call it 4, 4. Those 2 points, yeah. And then I'm going to say x1, y1. So what this means, this is the x in the first position, and this is the y in the first position. And then here, x2, y2. This is the x in the second position, this is the y in the second position. And then you go substitute into your formula. So you say d equals, and anytime you substitute something into a formula, you put it in parentheses. And you do not have to memorize this, it is on your formula sheet. So the parentheses were already there. So now I need to put in the x in the second position. So that means I need to substitute, and I'm going to put my parentheses 2, 4 squared. The minus sign was already there. And then I need to substitute in x1. So that's going to be 1. Oops, I'm sorry. That shouldn't be squared. Sorry, guys. Take the squared off. So 4 minus, and then x1 is 1, okay? And then we're going to go and square this, and then put the plus back, open the parentheses again, and then y2, we'll put 4, and then minus the y1 is 1, so 1, and then we're going to put the parentheses that were already there and put the squared up there, okay? And there's a couple of ways you can do this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you. You're going to take your calculator and you're going to put that in exactly what you have on your paper. So here, and then we're going to say parentheses, and that was, I'm going to put 2 parentheses because that's what's on the paper. The parentheses that's there and the one you have to input. So you're just copying this into the calculator. So I'm going to go back to decimals, and if you have a graphing calculator, it's the same procedures. Okay, close the parentheses, minus, open the parentheses, 1, close them, and then we're going to put the last one, and we're going to put squared, and then we're going to say plus, let me go see. So the second one was 4, close the parentheses, minus, open the parentheses, 1, and then we're going to square that, and then we're going to close the parentheses. Oops, hold on. Delete. That shouldn't be squared. Close the parentheses, and now we're going to square it. And we get the same answer, 4.42, or we have 4.24. So that means my answer here is 4.24 units. Okay, and you choose which way you want to do. You decide. All right, let's go on to the next thing. This question says find the midpoint. So let's talk about what midpoint means. Midpoint means exactly that, midpoint, middle point. So if you look at this here, we want to find the middle of this line. So I'm going to go down here, and we're going to find midpoint next. So if I did midpoint, and that means the middle point of the line, or not even the line segment of the line segment. And there is a formula that helps you to find the middle, and that is also on your formula sheet. And the midpoint, hold on, I'm not sure if they give you this one on the formula sheet for geometry. But what midpoint means is you're going to have two coordinates. You take the x1 and add it to the x2, and you divide it by 2, and then you take the y1, add it to the y2, and divide it by 2. Okay, that's your midpoint formula. So if you can remember what midpoint means, you take the x's, add them together, divide it by 2. You take the y's, add them together, and divide it by 2. Okay, so let's go grab our points, and we're going to say the point was 1, 1, and the other one was 4, 4. So we'll call this point A and this point B. So we get, I like to label this x1, y1, x2, y2, x in the first position, y in the first position, x in the second position, y in the second position. So I'm going to go here and just substitute in. And remember, anything we substitute into a formula, you put it in parentheses. So I get, to substitute that into my formula, I get x1 is 1, so 1 plus x2 is 4 over 2, comma, y1 is 1 plus y2 is 4 over 2, so we get 5 over 2 and 5 over 2, and you can put this in your calculator to give you a decimal form, and I know that 5 over 2 is 2.5, 2.5. So if I wanted to plot this midpoint, then I would go up here and go and find 2.5, and then 2.5. So that's the middle of that line segment. That is the midpoint. Okay, and the last one is to find the slope. And I'm going to show you slope middle school way. There is a slope formula on your sheet, and you can decide to either use a slope formula or you can use a graph. Either way you want to do this is perfectly fine with me. So I'm going to use this space right here, and we are going to do the slope. Now I'm going to show you the middle school way, where you can, I won't even say middle school, I'm just going to say the graphing way, which is probably the way you learned it in middle school. So what you do is, and I'm going to erase the stuff that I have here already. What you do is you plot your 2 points. I'm going to leave that so we can find the slope of that line. So since this line rises from left to right, we know it's going to have a positive slope. And what M is, what slope is equal to, is rise over run. That's what slope means. Where rise is the y and run is the x. Well, it's the change in y over the change in x. That's what rise over run equals. So what we're going to go here, we're going to find our rise over our run. So we're going to count. If I start at the one that's always, if I start at the one to the right, if the slope is positive, then what I do is I'm just going to count how far did I rise and how far did I run. And then the direction tells you whether you go negative or positive. So since I need to go up to get to this other point, then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. So my rise is up 3, and up means positive. And then here I need to run over to get to this point, and since I'm going to the right, it's going to be positive. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I run to the right 3. So that means my slope is equal to 1 3 over 3, which is 1. My slope is 1. Now, there is another way to get that too, and that's with a formula. So, slope, you can do it that way with the graph, whichever way you like, and I'll go in between as I work out these problems. The slope is equal to M is, and I'm not sure if this was on your formula sheet, it might be, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Either one of these will help you get the slope. Now, if you like the rise over run better, then you can do that one. You can just use the graph and go for it. So this is how you use it if you feel like you don't want a graph and you just want to play with the points. Either way, I'm perfectly fine. You choose. So of course, label these points if you're going to go the formula route, and then you go 4 minus 1, and remember to always, when you put something into an equation, put it in parentheses. Please do this, because if you don't, you're going to get some errors down the road when we start dealing with more complex situations. Equals 3 over 3, which is the same as 1, which we had already found with the graph. So if you like to just plot it right quick and do rise over run, then so be it. Or if you want to just roll with the formula, then so be it. This one and this one may be on your formula sheet, and we probably discussed it. Well, I know we've discussed it in class, so you can just look at it and see which ones you have to memorize and which ones you don't. Okay, so we found everything here. So we got a positive slope, we found our midpoint, and we found our distance. All right, so let's get some more practice in, and I am going to alternate in between the methods that I use. So whichever one you use, you should still get the same answer as me. Okay, it says given a graph, find the distance, the midpoint, and the slope. Okay, I'm going to go with distance first, and I'm going to use Pythagorean Theorem first to find the and I'm going to show you which 2 points to find the distance for. So find the distance of, I'm going to call this A, and I'm going to call this B. So I'm going to find the distance of line segment AB, and I am going to go with Pythagorean Theorem to make distance easy for me. So I'm going to say distance, and I'm going to go with Pythagorean Theorem on this problem. If you do the distance formula, then that's no problem too. So I'm going to draw my right triangle, or you can draw it at the bottom, whichever one you want to do is fine. So here I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 6, and I am, let me make that a little straighter. Y'all just make sure you connect your points very good so you don't have to do what I'm doing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so this is a 6 and 6. So I got 6 up, 6 over. So if I use the distance formula, if I use Pythagoras Theorem, and I'm looking for the hypotenuse, so I would say c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And using the line method, the side that I'm looking for, call it x. So I get x squared equals 6 squared plus 6 squared. And so we get x squared equals 36 plus 36. And let me go ahead and move this. Give me a second, guys. I'm not going to leave this right here. Let me move it. Let me move it down. Oh, hold on. Let me cut it. Do I insert a blank page after this one? And then I am going to paste so you can see the math. I didn't want that to be sloppy for you guys. Give me a second and I'll make it bigger. Alright, so, and let me go draw my stuff back. So here's the math. So 36 plus 36. And then we get x squared equals, you can use your calculator to add this together. You get 72. And we're going to take the square root of both sides. Square root of 72. And we get x equals, you can use your decimals, clear this out, square root 72. And this is the calculator you're going to get on your test, guys. So you get 8.4, and I'm around to the nearest hundred, so 8.49. So x equals 8.49, and we don't have any units, so I'm going to say units. Okay, so we are done with distance for that problem. Okay, let me go on back. And I'm going to draw my little thing back. Okay, and we had found this was 6 and 6. Alright, so now it's telling me to find the midpoint. So midpoint, I'm just going to roll with the formula. But in order to do that, I need to go and get the 2 points that I'm working with. So here, this is going to be -3 and -5. I'm going to call that point A. And point B is 3 and 1. Okay, so we're going to do midpoint. The point was -3 and -5, and that was point A, and point B was 3 and 1. All right. So the midpoint formula, and if you can just remember, this is x1, y1, x2, y2. Take the 2 x's. The formula tells you to x1 plus x2, take the 2 x's, add them together, divide by 2. Take the 2 y's, add them together, and divide them by 2. And then here, anytime you substitute into a formula, you put your numbers in parentheses. So -3 plus three. Let me make sure I got that number right. Yeah, okay. -3 plus 3 divide by 2. And -5 plus 1, divide that by 2. So here, this becomes 0, so 0 over 2. And if you need your calculator, oops, sorry guys. If you need your calculators, then put this in your calculator, -4 over 2. I'm using my mental math. If you need to use your calculator, then use your calculator to input these numbers in. So my midpoint is equal to 0, 2. This is my midpoint, 0, -2. So I'm going to go to my graph, and that's right here. That's the middle of the line. And you might be able to look at some of these things and figure out what the midpoint is, especially if you have a graph. You can kind of make a guess at where you think it is. But this is how you get it accurately. And now we're going to do the slope. I'm going to go with slope graphically since I already drew my triangle. I know that slope is equal to rise over run is rise over run, and there is a formula. I'm not going to use the formula here. I'm just going to use the rise over run method since I have a graph. So if I rise up, my slope is going to be positive since the line is increasing from left to right. If I rise up, I go positive, so that's 6. I rise up 6 to get to point B, and then I go over 6 to actually touch it. So that means my rise is 6 and my run is 6. So 6 over 6, which is equal to 1. So I found what it asked me to find. Okay? So let's go ahead and go to the next one. And if you use the formula for distance and slope, you should have gotten the same thing. So if you did get the same thing, go back and check and make sure you substitute in correctly. And if you can't figure it out, hit me up and I'll help you. Okay, so let's go to this next one. It says, given the points, do the following and find the distance, the midpoint, and the slope. So here I'm going to graph this, and I am going to use all of the graphing methods to help me find the distance, midpoint, and slope. And then here I'll use the equation methods. So here it says, given the points 0, 2, and well, I'll go back and forth, and 2, 3. So 0, x is 0, y is 2, and then we get 2 and 3. So I'll call this A, and I'll call this B. And it is asking me to do the following, find the distance. So I am going to go with Pythagorean Theorem to help me find this distance. So I'm right here. If I could, that goes there. If I connect the dots, then I go over 2, up 1. So I'm going to go with Pythagorean Theorem to help me find the distance. That just makes it easier since I'm dealing with the graph. Okay, so I get c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So here we get x squared equals 2 squared plus 1 squared. So x squared equals 4 plus 1. And if you need your calculator, babies, please use it. X squared equals 5. I'm using mental math, but you can put this in the calculator. And then here, the square root of x squared, the square root of 5. And then we get x equals, go to your decimals, and we're going to put square root of 5 in there, and we get 2.2, and I'm going to the nearest hundred, so 2.24. And it didn't give us any units, so 2.24, and we'll just say units. And that's the distance. All right. So that question now, it says to find the midpoint. I'm going to use the midpoint formula. And you can kind of make a guess on where you think the middle of this line is. I do not recommend you do that, babies. I recommend that you just plug and chug, use the formula so you don't make mistakes. Unless you have a multiple choice and you can kind of do the process of elimination to help you reason. And then you can do that. But other than that, stick with what I taught you. That's 2 and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and call this x1, y1, x2, y2. And my formula tells me to take the x's, add them together, and then divide it by 2, because the middle means to take the horizontal distance, add it together from one point to this point, divide it by 2, and then take the vertical distance and add it together and divide it by 2. So that's essentially what you're doing. Oops. y2 plus y1. Divide that by 2. And so here, let's knock it out. So that's going to be 0 plus 2. Anytime you substitute something into an equation, please put it in parentheses. Please do not omit me telling you that. And hold on, let me move this formula around for you so we can just keep it consistent. y1, y2. It really doesn't matter which one you put together with the x or the y's as far as which one goes first, but I just want to keep it consistent for you so that those of you that need me to stay consistent, you can see it. It doesn't matter because addition is commutative. It's not going to change the answer. So 2 plus 3 over 2. And then here we get 2 over 2, 5 over 2. And we're going to get the midpoint to be 1, 2.5. You can leave it as fractions. Prefer the exact answer, but I'm giving you the decimal here. You can say 1 and 5 over 2, but if you need to go back and graph this, you're going to need the decimal form of the answer. Alright, the last one is to find the slope, and I am going to do the slope, the graphing method, since I had to graph that anyway. So here, to get slope, and the symbol for slope, if you don't remember, it is M. M equals, okay, so we're looking at a situation where I need to do slope is rise over run. And here, since I'm using graphs, I'm going to use this method. So I need to rise up 1 to get to the other point. So my rise is 1, and it's positive 1 since I'm going up. And my run is 1, 2. It's positive 2 since I'm going to the right. So the slope here is 1/2. And we did all 3. Alright, so for this next situation, wow, I should have chose better. I'm going to choose this to be point A. I'm going to choose this to be point B since it didn't give us any points. And I am going to use the actual formulas this time. So that means my A is -6 and 5. And my B is 6 and 6 and -7. Okay, so those are my 2 points. And I'm going to insert a page and we're going to go to work. So my points are A, -6 and 5. And my B is, and I'm going to use all formulas this time, 6 and -7. And you can decide to use the other methods, but I'm going formulas so you can see me work with the formulas too. So x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to go distance formula first. So if I do distance, we would get, the formula tells you what you do not have to memorize. It is on your formula sheet, so utilize it. So distance equals x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. And we're going to substitute into our formula. Alright, so I'm going to put the parentheses that was already there. And then x2 is 6. So I'm going to say 6, close the parentheses that I'm putting in, minus, then I'm going to open the parentheses again, x1, which is -6, close the parentheses, and then put the one that was already there back and square, plus, I'm going to go to y2, which is -7, well, put the parentheses that was already there, so we get -7 minus, and then y1 is 5, so I'm going to put my parentheses, 5, close it, and then put the parentheses that's a part of the formula, and put the squared up there. And let me make this look like a minus and not a plus. Minus. Okay, so now you go and do the math. So grab your calculator and put in exactly what you see, babies. So I'm going to go to here, I'll push clear, and let me see what's on my paper. So I get 6, 6 minus, then I had parentheses, -6. And this is the reason why I told you guys to make sure you put parentheses, because this negative makes a difference when you're putting it into the formula. Plus parentheses that's there, and then I need another parentheses, -7. Oops. Make sure you're careful about making sure the cursor is in the right spot, because as you see, it will bounce. Minus, what was this, 5. See how it moves around? Just make sure it's in the right spot. And then close the parentheses, and then we're going to square that. And we get the answer to be 10.677, so we'll get 10.68. So here is 10.68, and then it gives us any units, so we're going to say units. And remember, distance is always a linear unit too. Alright, now let's go to the next one. Said to find the midpoint, and we use a formula for midpoint anyway. So midpoint would be, take the two x values, add them together, find the middle of it, so you divide by 2. Take the two y values, add them together, find the middle of it, divide it by 2. So anytime you substitute something in, make sure you put it in parentheses, and then 5 plus -7, divide that by 2. So you get 0/2, comma, -2/2. If you need the calculator to help you with the math, then so be it. Use your calculator. And you get 0 and -1. Alright, that's your midpoint. Last one is slope, and we're going to go formula for slope too. So the slope formula, which I think they give it to you. If they don't, remember slope is equal to m is equal to rise over run. And the formula tells you, and I do believe they give it to you. I'm not sure. I have to look on you guys' formula sheet. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if they don't give it, remember how this go. Rise means y's. So you take the two y values and you subtract them. And then run means x, which means you run horizontally. That's the only way you can run. And you can only rise either vertically or horizontally. I mean, you can only rise vertically, and you can only run horizontally. So that would represent x, and this would represent y. So you can write yourself a note, y over x, or change in y over change in x, and that's what this means. Subtract the two y's, subtract the two x's. So I'm going to go use my formula then. So we get m is equal to, what were those points? And I'm going to write them down here so I don't have to keep going back and forth. And my B point was 6 and -7. So here, just going to substitute in -6. Oh, forgot to label x1, y1, x2, y2. If you do this every time, I promise you, you will never get it wrong. I know I have to do it to make sure I remember where stuff goes. So that's -7. Minus 5, and you notice I'm substituting into a formula, so I'm putting things in parentheses. 6 minus 5. You can use your calculator, you can use the alpha y equals button, and if you choose to use decimals, then what you can do to get that fraction key is right here. I'm going to use my mental math. You can use the fraction key, but I'm just going to go mental math. So I get -12 over 1. So that means my slope is -12. And I'm going to go look at that graph and see if that's true. Well, look, the line is falling, so yes, the slope should have been negative. And I'm going to show you guys that might have did it. If you chose these 2 points, that might have did it the rise over run way, because I think this is pretty cool. So if you draw your, oops, let me get where I can draw this straight and I'm not struggling in these streets. Okay, so that's my point right there. That's my rise, which is more of a fall this time, and then my run is right here. So you just count. And remember I told you, if you fall, if you go down, then it has to be negative. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is this going by twos? No, I'm okay. I can go ones. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 1. Whew. My eyes getting crossed. Y'all see me in class. I'm getting crossed up. So, but you can count and you should be able to get the same negative 12 as your slope. Okay, and let me go and check that out just to make sure I did it right. Let me make sure I wrote these points down correctly too. -6 and 5, and then +6 and -7. Yeah, so we're okay. Negative. Oh, you know what? I wrote this wrong, guys. Wait a minute. So we get 6, -6. Wait a minute, I messed up. So, and this is why you should check yourself too. I do it all the time too. This is typical mistakes. So it's -12 over 6 plus 6 is +12. So the slope should be -1, not -12. I'm tripping. So if you go back and you count, you should get -1 here also. So make sure that you count. All right, so I found all of those. You count or use the formula, whichever one you want to do. All right, oh, that's it. Okay, so I will see you guys in class and you decide which method you want to use to get this done. Bye.